American-Chinese relations is affected by the World Trade Center is criminally foreign influenced slash hyper criminally foreign influenced. For example, where and how the differences of guilt with the breaching method that reassigned with nature communicates with black people's rights of eyes, and what our founders left to classify for themselves to communicate for themselves and for us about the breaching method, which was a hyper foreign, so to speak, because of how it had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, and they weren't all the possession of England. And those countries that had collusions with such, even against our black people's rights of eyes communication. And then America's founders were born. That means roles where they had been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. Otherwise, that body was sensed. There were internationally monitored conversations that were entrenched collusion slash S with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, any and everything. The breaching method was shown it needs to use. It needed to use to have people use for it. Because everything the breaching method does is through countries A through Z. Blaming while valuing having been blamed, other things, others, ourselves. Things that a breaching method causes nature to demonstrate. And it specifically have people counter it incorrectly and then to defend that. And to have counters and demonstrations of that sense and accounted for, but through other people, with it constantly helping that outcome slash S, where the peak sophistication and the opposite are collusion, too, sensing for or sensing for the breaching method. That's what we can discern just with black people's rights of eyes. Evidence. And it generates more evidences. For example, the other species bodies also have two eyes, even if they don't have black people's rights of eyes. There's a communication answer. Nature shows us questions and answers and how it communicates. It shows us that we have been systems individually grouped in all humanity voicings through an as systems tactile terrier. From why and how nature wants us to use our syntax regarding why and how. We are an individual different species body made up of a whole bunch of individual different species bodies. Individual bodies of that same species body. All group differences nature uses to show us its own body to an extent. Its complete identity of relationship to itself comes with that equally, though. And the only increasing value of that three ways equally increasing his value. Inseparable from every finite detail. And or as the difference between it as that, or as the order of the finite. Non-distinctly from how it is, what is active or grouped differences. Again, it shows us its difference generating all group differences. That individual identity of value slash value progression, that which is generating a whole bunch of individual different species bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies. It is generating all group differences. We can make the breaching method made all roles with systems individually grouped and together as the hyper algorithm slash algorithms, for example. Tactical terrier from its own. It's the alphabet decipher at ancient gaming system. In other words, we are in a semi-ancient trap that needs other things, others, ourselves, to be and to stay blamed for where and how. In other words, when I was in grammar school, increasingly, in other words, I only have love and respect for the kids I went to school. Even I know that there were people from off the campuses that influenced, and people from the intelligence communities near me that I didn't have classes with. They're putting fake things in databases, like little magic tricks, just like a magic trick to make it appear like other, and they're building on that. and they're building collusion slash S with names at next to all natures of crime scenes and of campuses per roles with this breaching method's use of location slash S everywhere the human species body has an individual body. And then modern religious messengers were born. And then modern countries were born. There were already names. And are still, we can observe how they are being haven't been used consciously by a breaching method, but everyone rolls with it though. So through everyone else, as systems tactical ulterior from the one that is inseparable from our short words, how it uses our short words distinctly from their protraction, the grouped. In other words, we are not allowed free speech. Each age was shown things that were shown. We have black people's rights of eyes. The Constitution stands abridged. There are suburbs that were designed before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched sickly distinctly, and while sickly non-distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, which is a torture, extortion, fact-cheating nature slavery against everyone method. No one wanted rolls with that. Our founders did not want rolls with that. One of the reasons they had to leave us directed to understand them, the only one we know the name of as our founders, plural, is James Madison. And then he was a president, and it was declassified for him and for the rest of the founders. That and how no one had free speech, including James Madison and the rest of our founders, which are distinct from our presidents, which are distinct from the people that were counter-extorted and forced to take part with the Constitutional Convention and the Declaration of Independence. There are people that were pretending they could speak for justice or positive, not as criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments. For example, going against a tea tax while slavery was entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies, while the identity of the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous, as it is actually manifest, it could not be afforded discerned as it is discerned, as is discerned relativity slash hyper relativity projecting. Why and how we have two bodies? Why and how we are a human species body of individual bodies? And there are totally different species, individual species of individual made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies of the individual body. Nature shows us to discern syntactically its identity of value progression, distinct from its parts, including ourselves as its parts. We didn't invent how and why we are a species body. It shows us because there are totally different species bodies, and we didn't invent that. So all exceptions in exception nature come with demonstrations slash S of the same thing too, if we observe. But what we have been observing, the nature of logic at each age, the nature of fact treatment nature, and then further at campuses, as collusion slash S with why and how. There are self-value, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought, fact treatment nature, quality aspects, and nature itself as criminal insidiousness slash hypercriminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer. Criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence. We could use as evidence, as it is, by nature itself projected where and how, even though everyone was sickly, non-distinctly hurt northern colonies and southern colonies, it is left out from the reasoning regarding what had been unfolding at the time. Then and now too. That's nature shows us a positive, that and how everyone was sickly, non-distinctly hurt by the same thing. And it's positive how when everyone left that out and leaves it out, because that's right where we can show it all wrong together. But because of a breaching method also involved there, A through Z are in a semi-ancient trap that made self-cultivated roles with what it only allowed propagated, as roles with the human system syntactically appreciated as names uses, individually grouped and together, humanity voicing tactical ulterior, and then defending that sense and sensibilities, use Jan Austin's phrase. sensing for the breaching method. Anyone admits it. In other words, oh, well, this wasn't their fault. No, how could all this time have been left out? How nature itself communicates with black and white, all kinds of things, and we have those things replaced. How can we leave out the delusions that are clearer than day? How we left it out is how there is relative to their magic tricks, putting fake ties and natures of ties to kids, especially distinctly at each location difference. Because people that will never see each other. It's an identity theft, fraud, slander method that keeps each age and nature of each family of difference, as of work, criminal enterprises, private ones, or the interbranch or intelligence tied to them, the difference of their guilt. They have time collusions even when they're not in the same case. And all sides of criminal and civil cases. And news at the same time, the interbranch intelligence and layers of other overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, put in the same sequence shifts as collusion /S, with a method /S that's recorded, but no one follows mandated law. In other words, so please, China, for example, people from UConn, please have UConn get Harvard Hospital onto paper. They have a bunch of people with Duke University, too, involved with the Leahy family, with some police that have been forging, switching names. They have rules with some untimely deaths on and off campuses that are connected, too, years apart, but also murders at the same time intercities brought up, and World Trade Center predicate acts. And the same families involved with years apart, proven first force child abusers, leaders of the kids. Increasingly, people I know tied to the buildings and spots next to Fox Connecticut News also recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed collusion /S with intelligence, foreign and domestic, criminally foreign, tactically delusions wrought to the all wrong Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. All along Franklin Avenue and conjunctions to it and to that, like the state corrections offices. All and Main Street, Franklin Avenue 2 is right into Main Street. I don't know what the route number is, but in other words, all along the same ones, all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield and with corners of the street, they've been planting evidences through time. With former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, all Burke criminal enterprises, private ones, all the different countries in the news and their family members, tied to the same ones with the Wethersfield police. Fake conversations with me as a kid, as now as an adult. And they brought up the name Collo. They didn't give the whole name. Bob Chase from Whiting Forensics confessed the name Phil Collo. And then I was recorded afterwards. So Whiting Forensics increasingly has collusions with people from other areas, planting evidences on my street since I was a kid. And their rules with Sandy Hook campuses with all kinds of natures of organized crimes and confessions about bad things before they happened, including the rules with going against the assault rifles years before they were going to go against it, and as people doing it who bought a whole bunch of, like, people with the name Kerr have a whole bunch of guns, and rules on Morgan Circle with the Wethersfield police and conjunctions to it and conjunctions to that. Also with former Mayor Gould's family and O'Brien family and the others involved with predicate acts on all sides of my house, planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and sequence shifts with judges and prosecutors forging and switching names. These are people I didn't even have classes with. And then they're trying to make with their exceptions, they did that consciously to cover up predicate acts rules and putting more hyper additional collusions increasingly with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people next to body dumping spots. Collusion /S with the same name /S with that house up connections between them next to the campuses I went. On Valley Crest in Wethersfield, there's a DeMoro family, and there were a whole bunch of foreign and domestic involved with them and houses in their area who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm they have collusions with sexual and medical offenders of kids through the DeMoros, faking and changing evidences with them and putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to people that didn't even have classes together. Tried to make a fake exception with my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Peruzzi, increasingly involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced, and with other natures of organized crimes with the FBI and courts involved with the Britain Superior Court and Central Connecticut State University. Kids and adult, when I was a kid, and now I was an adult, the recorded confessed demonstrate Mr. Peruzzi is involved with them with the investigators use remotely criminally foreign influence tactical delusions, collusion/S with all these different countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people and intracultural cover-ups of roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders that are manifest against every individual voice, even the leader, no matter how powerful they could get. That because the breaching method knew it would be manifest that way. A whole bunch of styles of collusions with itself as an identity theft, fraud, slander method, which is one of the things that the laws of modern countries are value as simultaneously, just like all the laws, what witch trials are about, non-distinctly from what the slavery laws were about. And that breaching method against Native Americans, even when helping them, we could discern it's tactical ulterior. It's to keep positive and negative treatments, self-value, defenses with argument, premises treatments, factual nature, quality aspects of nature defended. Right, where, and how, and when. That can't be defended in the breaching method countered simultaneously, even though it's recorded. So we have offensively our free speech forbid. WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Their sources, interbranch and foreign, have wire crime acts and methods that they have self-value roles with. And they fake conversations with me on top of that. They have all kinds of different wire crime acts and methods. As collusions with Wethersfield Police that fake ties to me as a kid, fake conversations with me as a kid, and now as an adult, and at the police station. And they had the kind of libel brushes tied to that by doing it with WFSB. All kinds of organized crimes with their fake conversations with me. As their collusion/S with people increasingly before and after the World Trade Center attack, involved with all kinds of organized crimes with the World Trade Center. And they forced the Saudis to collusions with them. But it was also recorded since they were kids, used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactical collusions raw. The same way I recorded this. In other words, they've been influencing from off campuses, cover-ups, and forced good people to be evil. And that's stayed only because you guys aren't following mandated law. On a mass scale, they're influencing the people to have others get involved. And then they're just changing and faking what everyone says and said. And they're making them all guilty, too, the way they're doing that. Then they're pretending people make conspiracy, et cetera, et cetera. They can't afford to have discern the actually recorded value of their readings of statutes and precedents and of reality and of the validity even of when they caught kids and adults with crimes. They're faking it and changing it as collusion/S. This breaching method already used all sides of criminal and civil cases, the news, names next to the crime scenes, the campuses, in other words, the interbranch, the intelligence tied to them putting the same sequence shifts, natures of collusions with predicate acts with facts methods against each person. That's one of the things it is. Where and how you guys want to play games and prevent people from using how we have black people as whites of eyes. It means clearer than day to discern right through the name, the syntax, and right through the nature of the names of the people, the sciences. Even though they are victims/hyper victims, only capable of being victim predators/hyper predators, forced to blame on other things, others themselves. What they could have discerned, but since they were little kids, they should have blamed on a breaching method. That which was sickly distinctly, in other words, but also sickly non-distinctly, against every human difference, every human strength, and every human weakness. The difference of that too. So this breaching method is replacing how nature communicates. It's consciously replacing how nature communicates about difference, and how our founders actually communicated about difference. We're not supposed to put words in the mouth of Mao Zedong, but read the arm of Tyson. In other words, already had been entrenched. Humanity has as names A through Z, individual as group differences, as all humanity ways things, and through and as systems tactile from nature's. Nature's not telling everyone to wear suits and ties, to have counters and exceptions as an array. Sensing for the breaching method too, if anyone brings it up. In other words, there's no integrity by the people pretending to be integrity as collusion /S. What really makes the problems and the worst negative value nature progressions acts and natures in New York City is discernible. But to treat that properly, you don't leave out how the suburbs were designed. Northern colonies and southern colonies, tactically to nature to cause negative value nature progressions acts and natures. And more, the only means to counter that or to try to do damage control is the self-value. Was and is the self-value. The only means to cause positive value nature progressions acts and natures, the self-value, criminal and ceaseless natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions acts and natures. Criminal and ceaseless natures of positives. Truths can be used for lies. Facts can be used for lies. Can be used for the nature used to get over or to force that quality of fact-cheating nature that we know is forced. For example, if we try to use black people's whites of eyes, which is evidence is enough, with what we know off the top of our heads, that is true always, about American history, to discern right through the most researched, quote, experts, unquote, on American history. Unquote, American history, unquote. So to speak, all whisper creek. In other words. And we're gonna have to get used to the phrases. We have to understand, appreciate phrases like criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. I'm not a lawyer. Nature itself shows up. There is a scientific value we should name hypercriminal foreign influences. Because and this breaching method needs what it causes as hypercriminal foreign influence method /S, and rolls with it only remember, not even realize though. In other words, it causes, please get me off the fake conversation with WFSB real fast and the interbranch involved with them. A bunch of people with Harper courts and the Britain Superior Court and the District Court have collusions with intelligence at and next to the networks, as people also increasingly with the state capitol. Chick Casper sought me out when I was a kid, and then when I was older, to demonstrate non-verbally. Also with people associated with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members, and his lawyer, Robert Chevrolet. They have collusions with the spots and names and families next to the networks. Like next to Fox Connecticut News. It has something to do with people all along Route 3 who are in conjunctions into that, like Two-Rail Highway. In other words, I mean like Hangdog Lane and then Two-Rail Highway with that. Increasingly, Chet Casper and other people tied to him that know my name I never had a class with, never saw around schools. They're pretending other in databases and acting tied to it. And then there's also connections between people who pretended passions and emotions, like to fight me. And then right when I got him on the ground, the guy jumps into it. So there are adults and kids consciously colluding with other countries, though, as our country's roles with many nations in ways I observed, while they're covering up live progressions, including with silence. Weathersfield police are forcing me to leak these things. So please, America and China, They have a whole bunch of countries involved already with recorded criminally foreign influence uses and collusions with Weathersfield police chiefs retired, and like a Dillon family. A whole bunch of people tied to a Dillon family involved with all kinds of falsified police reports and sequence shifts and sexual and medical offenders of kids already proven, and people involved with the elderly homes at the same time they brought into it. You guys are high. You guys are